What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast with me, Chris Rickenbaugh, and this is episode number 180, and today I'm going to be breaking down learning from mistakes, because this is something that I've been, really learning and taking, just every single lesson, everything that's thrown our way, we are taking it as a lesson and being able to learn from those mistakes. And I wanted to talk about kind of where I'm learning this from and how somebody else could do this as well. So if you haven't listened to this podcast before, I'm using this to document my journey in real estate and business, and also bringing on high-level investors to share their stories about how they built their businesses. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where I document as well at Chris.ReiChenBachch. And if you're listening to this podcast, stay right where you are and like, share, and subscribe, because that is the only way we can reach more people and be able to help everyone be able to get closer to wealth, freedom, or whatever they're looking for in their life. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, and give us some more topics to be able to talk about on here. We have some really cool guests coming up, so make sure you tune in for those episodes. But for now, let's hop into today's topic. So if you have ever read the book, The Road Less Stupid, I read this probably 1 or 2 years, probably about 2 years ago now, and it had a huge impact on me because of the stories, because these are documenting the stories of, losing just about everything in the 2008 crash, and they're talking about learning from mistakes. And, with, some of the flip projects that we've been going through here over the past year, the partnerships ending, firing contractors, we have done a ton of learning from mistakes. And I say we, and I really mean me, because I'm the one having to hire and fire. I'm out at the projects. I'm having to, meet these people and really try and figure out, hey, is this somebody to work with? So it's been a lot of hiring and firing and trying to find the right people. But I wanted to break down a quote that was in this book, and I think this page here documents it perfectly. And it says, "There is no success without sacrifice. And the reality is that most of us would be farther along if we simply asked ourselves the question, what can I do to improve my situation?" So that is something that I've really been thinking about lately. As, we have 2 more projects that we're, still figuring out, trying to be able to piece them together to be able to get them to the finish line. And we thought we'd be able to take really big leaps and strides with it, but it's more of kind of inching it along. And, we are getting closer to that finish line. We're going to be about halfway here in about the next week on one project, and then they're going to be able to really get rolling. So being able to have that contractor who's able to just get in there, get crap done, keep the place clean, that has been a big game changer for us, even in this first week or 2 that we've been working with them. So being able to say, what can I do to improve my situation? So, the first step there is going to be being honest with where you are. So yes, we have made mistakes. Yes, I have made mistakes with these businesses, with some of the partnerships, but what am I going to do moving forward? Am I going to keep doing the same thing? Am I going to keep, just trying to do it on my own? Or am I going to say, hey, I've made these mistakes. Who am I going to be able to, lean on to be able to, I guess, hold me accountable? And that's probably not the best way to describe it, but, it's me saying, how am I not going to dig this hole any deeper? What am I going to be doing to get out of it? And that's really where a lot of this starts for me, because, we're starting from a negative standpoint. It's like, hey, we have eaten it on these last couple flips, but to do that right and correctly on the next one, how are we going to do that? So the first thing is we got caught. And what I was kind of taking from the partner is how to be able to pay the projects and move the money. And we figured out that that's wrong. So being able to keep all of this funds in this one project is going to be the main priority, because what we're trying to do is, we're trying to do it correctly. we don't want to keep making the same mistake. So we're learning from that and not making that same mistake again, because that's going to only, deepen the position. And then we got to start looking bigger, because we know these little chunks in real estate, whether that's a wholesale deal, whether that's a flip, we're only getting these chunks of money. It's not consistent income that's flowing in. So how are we going to be able to do that? And if you've listened to me on this podcast before, I've talked about Gideon Spencer, and we've had that podcast a couple episodes ago, and it really just changed my mindset towards, I need to be thinking bigger. I'm working, hard right now trying to solve these small problems where I could be working the same amount and solving a much bigger problem that's going to be way more rewarding. And that's going to be buying businesses. So that is something we have really looked into here lately. And I think we may have one under contract here very, very soon as we're in the negotiations. But being able to look at this and say, hey, we're in this fix and flip business in the wholesale and real estate. We're earning these little chunks of money. Say I'm, putting in tons of hours to be able to just find this one wholesale deal that I can make $10,000 on. I said, okay, I can do that, but how do I find a business that's, pumping cash flow into our account, $10,000 to $15,000 every single month, so that we don't have to rely on the real estate, so we don't have to rely on the wholesaling and the flipping, and that can be just its separate business, and that's going to be able to earn more of that income in the chunks, but we don't have to rely on it, go flip to flip or deal to deal. And, then we're just deal chasing, and we're, kind of like a hamster in a wheel, to where we're just chasing the next one and the next one and the next one, to where we could have this business that's pumping money into our account every single month. So what can I do to improve my situation? I need to be looking at the bigger picture and saying, I can get down and dirty in this business and, just grind. But at the end of the day, who is going to be able to help me get to that next level? And that's just thinking, getting in the rooms that are helping me think bigger. And thinking bigger has turned my brain to, if we start solving this bigger problem, it's a bigger deal, bigger numbers, but we negotiated it just like another house. This is like me going into somebody's house and negotiating to purchase it. And we've done the same thing with a business that's going to be able to put $10,000 to $15,000 in our pockets. So stay tuned for that. But that is one of those things that is improving our situation, because we're thinking on a bigger scale, and it's actually going to be the same amount of work to be able to do that than if I was just chasing this chunk of money in wholesale and flipping. So we're not giving up on the real estate. We're still going to be doing that, but we're also going to have a business alongside putting money into our pockets. And that is where the priority has been. And some of that focus has been. But another part of this book in this page is education without execution. So if you are just reading these books, and if you're just kind of, going through the motions, things are happening to you, but you're not learning from them, that is called shelf help. And the quote is, if I don't apply the technique, strategy, and distinctions I am learning, I will make no forward progress. So learning from these books is one thing, being able to read them. And I meet a ton of people who have read these books, but they're just not applying them in their real life. So another podcast I was listening to is, I believe it was Brian Lubin talking about the time, from learning to taking action. And that's really what sets people apart. And he interviews millionaires, billionaires, and then he's meeting people like me or people in corporate jobs making a ton of money. And he's seeing this day after day after day. And he's being able to say that, the biggest difference between these people are who gets the information and, how short of time do they actually take action? Is it 6 months, or are they able to, learn from this podcast and go do it here in the next 5 minutes? And that's really the big distinction. So being able to not just have that shelf help, you're actually going in and implementing these things that you're learning. So that is another big thing that I've learned, because some of the DMs I've had with Gideon is, hey, you should change your Instagram name to your personal name and not just your brand. I did that night. being able to see the bigger picture. It's like, hey, let me just go on Crexy tonight and let me, look up some different businesses to see what catches my eye. And that's when I, caught a hold of this opportunity, and that led me to a different opportunity, and now we may be buying it. So different opportunities for this bigger scale, but, just not letting these books and these podcasts be shelf help. You're actually taking action on these items in these books. So I just wanted to, pop that into everybody's brains today. I know it's been a lot of thinking for me as well, and I'm so excited to be able to document this journey. Whether one person is listening, whether a million people are listening, I'm going to be still documenting my journey as I go through this process, and you'll be able to see it all. From when I quit my job and had nothing going on to buying my first flip, going through all of the pains and struggles of the flips to be able to get to this other side and see this bigger picture and all of the success. So I'm super excited to be able to, just keep documenting this journey. So this has been the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast with me, Chris Rickenbaugh, and this has been episode 180. We will see you on Friday with an interview. See you then.